The war against male headship is an assault on the God of the Bible.
All right, let's see it. And also, it's old school Nickelodeon today.
The woman is made after the man, male headship. The woman is made for the man, male headship. The woman is named by the man, male headship.
So the patriarchal worldview of the Bible is certainly outdated and harmful, but I want to point to something peculiar about where these three claims come from that are being held up as an indication that the God of the Bible wants male headship. All three of these things come from the creation account that begins in the second half of Genesis 2:4 and runs to the end of Genesis 3. Genesis 4 was originally an independent narrative. This creation account was probably composed in the 7th century BCE. And about a century later, you had the priestly authors who composed Genesis 1:1 through the first half of Genesis 2:4. And they composed their creation account to replace the earlier creation account because they didn't like it. There were issues they had with its scope. There were issues they had with the way it represented God. There were issues they had with the way it represented the creation. Probably the biggest issue is that God creates and then says, uh-oh, there's something that is not good about my creation. And then God sets out to fix it, and it doesn't work on the first try. It takes trial and error for God to fix their creation. And so in the priestly creation account, God creates by divine fiat, and immediately God sees that it was good. There is nothing that can be not good about God's creation according to the priestly creation account. So that's intended to update and replace and supersede the earlier creation account. Now, ultimately, they get recorded on a single scroll at some point, and that becomes the authoritative collection. And that was probably intended to ensure that neither was lost, but it resulted in us having to impose our own unifying interpretive framework to make sense of these two different conflicting creation accounts as if they were one single creation account, which means we're negotiating with the text. And that's what this creator is doing here. They're holding up the earlier creation account that other biblical authors reject. And they're saying this is what God wants, which requires ignoring the fact that the later creation account has man and woman created simultaneously, ignoring the fact that these details about woman being created for the man, about man naming the woman, are replaced by the priestly creation account. Instead, they're going to center and give priority to the earlier rejected account, and they're going to marginalize and ignore the very different story of creation so that they can negotiate with the text in a way that allows them to leverage the Bible's authority to structure power and values and boundaries in a way that serves their interests. And those interests, in this case, are patriarchal, are misogynist, are harmful.
And if that's not enough, the Bible doesn't say sin came into the world through one couple. It says sin came into the world through one man. Why? Male headship.
So Romans 5:12 is itself renegotiating and misinterpreting Genesis 3 to have Adam as the active agent, when the reality is that the text of Genesis 3 explicitly has Eve as the active agent. Eve is the one who chooses to eat the fruit. Eve then gives the fruit to her husband, who was with her the entire time and didn't say a word, and he eats. And then when God curses the serpent, and then Eve, and then Adam, God curses Adam because he obeyed the voice of his wife. So according to Genesis 3, it was entirely Eve's initiative. So transferring that agency over to Adam and saying it was his doing is a flagrant misreading of the text because misogyny.
Yes, you say that, but isn't that why we've had all these atrocities against women, because of this grotesque, archaic idea?
Yes.
No, it's not. Then the man said, this is at last bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She should be called Isha, a woman, because she was taken out of Ish, man. This is an idea of complete equality. She's me. She's the same thing that I am. She came from me.
So this argument has absolutely no relevance whatsoever to the observation that a patriarchal worldview has caused untold atrocities.
Women in the Christian world, where the Bible has taken root and shaped the culture, are the freest, most prosperous, most protected women on the face of the earth.
So this is demonstrably false. Studies have repeatedly and consistently demonstrated over the course of many years and around the world that where religiosity is higher, and it does not matter which religious tradition we look at, gender equality is lower. Where gender equality is higher, religiosity, again, irrespective of the tradition, is lower. And this creator's claim is also a textbook example of what's called benevolent sexism, which is where we institutionalize and embed sexist ideologies and then either try to hide them, try to blame them on outside influences, or try to insist that our sexism actually results in more equality, which is precisely what this creator is doing.